Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to medieval England, but we are going to look at that old world in a gentle and rather thoughtful new way. For tonight we are going to wonder about the people of the medieval world whose minds worked a little differently from most. The deeply focused, the pattern lovers, the keepers of routine, the ones who found the noise and crowd of the world a great deal to bear. We are going to wonder about the people we might today recognize as autistic or as neurodivergent, and about how such minds might have lived and worked and found their place in a world that had no word for any of it. It is a quiet and curious and rather warm-hearted journey we are taking tonight, and I hope you will find it as gently fascinating as I do. So, before you get comfortable, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always 2 in the morning somewhere, and thank you to the viewer who suggested this topic. You know who you are. And if this channel helps carry you off to sleep, tap the like button and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim those lights, switch on a fan for some sweet background hum, and get comfortable, because we have a long and gentle journey ahead of us tonight. A quiet and thoughtful wander through the medieval world and the many different minds that lived in it. You do not need to remember any of it. Everything tonight is gently told. A quiet and warm-hearted history held at a soft and comfortable distance, a story to drift away to. Have you ever wondered how someone whose mind worked a little differently would have fared in that old world, without any of the understanding we have now? Have you ever wondered where such a person might have found their place, their peace, their purpose in the medieval world? The first thing to understand as we begin our gentle wander tonight is that the medieval world had no word for autism, no concept of it, no understanding of the mind that we would recognize at all. And this simple fact shapes everything that follows. For without the word and without the understanding, the people of the medieval world could not have known what we now know, could not have named what we can now name, and had to make sense of the different minds among them in quite other ways. Let us begin then with this absence, this missing word, and consider gently what it meant. Autism, as an understanding, is very new indeed, a way of seeing the human mind that emerged only in the modern age, refined and developed over the last century or so into the understanding we have today. For almost all of human history, there was no such concept, no name for this particular way of being, no framework for understanding the minds that we would now recognize as autistic. The medieval world, then, knew nothing of autism as we understand it, had no place for it in its picture of the human person, and could not have thought about it in the way we do. This is not because such minds did not exist, for they surely did, but simply because the understanding had not yet been born. This means that the neurodivergent people of the medieval world, and there certainly were such people, lived entirely without the understanding that we now have, unnamed and unrecognized in the terms we would use. They did not know themselves as autistic, for the idea did not exist. Their families and neighbors did not understand them in those terms. The whole framework that helps us to make sense of such minds today was simply absent. They were, in a sense, invisible as what they were, present in every community but unrecognized. Their particular way of being unnamed and unexplained. This is a strange and rather poignant thought, that so many people across so many centuries lived without the understanding that might have helped them and those around them. And yet the medieval world was not without its own ways of understanding the people whose minds worked differently, for it made sense of them through the frameworks it did have, through religion and folk belief and the simple observations of daily life. Where we would see autism, the medieval world might see holiness, or foolishness, or simple eccentricity, or a particular gift or difficulty, interpreting the differently wired mind through the lens of its own understanding. These interpretations were sometimes kind and sometimes cruel, sometimes wise and sometimes mistaken, but they were the ways the medieval world had of making sense of the minds it could not name. We shall explore some of these ways as we go, gently and with care. What we must hold on to, as we begin, is a spirit of real humility and care, for we are wondering about people who cannot speak for themselves, across a great gulf of centuries, with only the faintest of evidence to guide us. We cannot diagnose the dead, cannot reach back and know for certain how any particular medieval mind was made, and we must never pretend otherwise. What we can do, gently and respectfully, is wonder, imagining how the minds we now recognize as autistic might have lived in that distant world, and celebrating the long human presence of such minds across all the ages. That is the careful and warm-hearted spirit in which we wander tonight. Let that missing word settle gently in the dark. We turn now to what we really mean when we speak of a mind that works a little differently. Before we go any further, we should pause gently to consider what we actually mean when we speak of autism, of a mind that works a little differently, for it is a subject often misunderstood, and it deserves to be understood with real care and warmth. So let us take a soft and unhurried moment to consider what autism really is, that we might wonder about it wisely as we wander through the medieval world. This is the gentle foundation for everything that follows. Autism is, at its heart, a natural variation in the way a human mind is made, a different way of experiencing and processing the world that is present from the very beginning of a person's life. It is not an illness, not a disease, not something that goes wrong or that needs to be fixed, but simply one of the many ways that human minds can be, as natural and as valid as any other. The autistic mind processes the world differently, attends to different things, experiences the senses and the social world in its own particular way, and this difference is woven into the very fabric of the person, a fundamental part of who they are. To understand autism as a natural variation, rather than a fault or an affliction, is the first and most important thing. Autism shows itself in many ways, and differently in every person, for it is often described as a spectrum, a wide range of related ways of being that vary enormously from one person to the next. Some autistic people are deeply focused on particular interests, absorbed in a subject with a passion and a depth that is quite remarkable. Many find great comfort in routine and predictability, in the reassuring sameness of the known. Many experience the senses with unusual intensity, so that sounds and lights and textures affect them more powerfully than they do most people. Many communicate and connect with others in their own particular ways, finding the unwritten rules of social life puzzling or tiresome. These are some of the common threads, though they weave together differently in every autistic person, so that no two are quite alike. It may help to picture, gently, a few of the ways these threads can show themselves, always remembering that they vary from person to person. There is the person who can talk with deep knowledge and evident joy about the subject they love, whether it is the stars or the birds or the workings of some craft, and who lights up in a way that is lovely to see. There is the person who likes to do things in the same order each day, who finds a real calm in the familiar sequence and a real distress in its sudden disruption. There is the person for whom a loud room, or a scratchy garment, or a harsh light is not a minor annoyance, but a genuine ordeal, and who feels the world's textures far more keenly than most. There is the person who says exactly what they mean, plainly and honestly, and who finds the little social performances of ordinary life puzzling and tiring. None of these is a fault, and none of these is the whole of any person. They are simply some of the ways a differently wired mind can meet the world, each of them as valid as any other way of being. Alongside what can be difficult, autism very often brings real gifts and strengths. For the autistic mind, in seeing the world differently, often sees things that others miss. The deep focus of the autistic mind can produce remarkable expertise and mastery. The love of pattern can reveal connections others cannot see. The honesty and directness that often come with autism can be a great virtue, The attention to detail can produce work of extraordinary quality and precision. These are real strengths, genuine gifts that come with the autistic way of being, and they remind us that a different mind is not a lesser mind, but simply a different one, with its own particular powers as well as its own particular challenges. The autistic mind has much to offer, and always has. To hold all of this in mind, gently and warmly, is to be ready to wonder wisely about the medieval world, to imagine how such minds, with their particular ways of being and their particular gifts and challenges, might have lived in that distant age. We shall carry this understanding with us as we wander, this picture of autism as a natural and valued variation, a different way of being with its own strengths and its own difficulties, woven into the person from the start. And we shall wonder, with warmth and care, how the people who were made this way might have fared in the medieval world, where the understanding we now have did not yet exist. Let that gentle understanding settle in the dark. We turn now to a rather beautiful and comforting truth, that minds like these are not new at all. At the very heart of our gentle wander tonight lies a truth that is both simple and rather beautiful, a truth worth pausing over and holding warmly in the mind, that autism is not new. For there is a common notion, quietly assumed by many, that autism is somehow a modern thing, a product of the modern world, something that has appeared only recently. And this notion is quite mistaken, in a way that it is genuinely comforting to correct. Let us wander gently into this reassuring truth. Autism is not a product of the modern world, not caused by anything modern, not a recent arrival at all, but a natural part of human variation that has always existed in every age and every place. The idea that autism is somehow new, that it has been caused by some feature of modern life, is a misunderstanding. For what is new is not autism itself, but only our understanding of it, our ability to recognize and name what has always been there. Autistic minds have been part of humanity since the very beginning, as much a part of our species as any other way of being, present in every generation, stretching back through all of human history. What has changed is not the presence of such minds, but simply our capacity to see them clearly. This means that in the medieval world, as in every other time, there were certainly people whose minds worked in the ways we now recognize as autistic, people who would today be understood as neurodivergent, living their lives in that distant age. They were there, in the villages and the towns, in the monasteries and the workshops, in every corner of the medieval world, these differently wired minds, as much a part of medieval humanity as they are a part of our own. We may be quite confident of this, not because we can point to particular individuals and diagnose them, which we cannot, but because such minds are a constant part of the human family, present in every population across all of time. The medieval world had its autistic people, as every world has, whether it knew it or not. There is something genuinely comforting in this thought, a warmth and a reassurance in the knowledge that neurodivergent people have always been part of humanity, never alone, never new, never a strange modern aberration. For anyone who is autistic today, or who loves someone autistic, there is comfort in knowing that this way of being is ancient and enduring, woven into humanity from the start, shared with countless others across all the centuries. Autistic people are not a modern anomaly, but part of an unbroken human thread stretching back to the very beginning, and there is real comfort and dignity in that long belonging. The autistic mind has always had its place in the human family. And so, in wondering about the medieval world tonight, we are really celebrating this long belonging, this unbroken presence of differently wired minds across all the ages of humankind. We are reaching back to affirm that the people of the past included, as the people of every age include, those whose minds worked in the ways we now recognize as autistic, and that they belonged, as fully as anyone, to the human family of their time. This is the warm and affirming heart of our wander tonight, the celebration of a long and ancient belonging, and we shall carry it with us as we go. Let that comforting truth settle gently in the dark. We turn now to one of the things that many autistic minds find most precious: the comfort of routine and sameness. Among the many characteristics often woven into the autistic way of being, one of the most common and most tender is a deep love of routine, a real need for predictability and sameness, a comfort found in the reassuring rhythm of the known. And this is a lovely place to begin our wandering about the medieval world, for the medieval world was, in many ways, a world of profound and reassuring routine. Let us wander gently into this comforting rhythm. Many autistic people find deep comfort in routine and predictability, in knowing what will happen and when, in the reassuring sameness of a familiar pattern to the day. Where the unexpected can be difficult and distressing, the known and the predictable are a source of real peace, a steadying rhythm that makes the world feel safe and manageable. This love of routine is not a mere preference, but often a genuine need, a way of finding calm and security in a world that can otherwise feel overwhelming and unpredictable. The familiar pattern, the known sequence, the reliable rhythm of the day, these are precious things to many autistic minds, sources of real comfort and peace. Now here is where our gentle wandering begins, for the medieval world was, in a way that our own restless world is not, a world of deep and abiding routine, its days and seasons following patterns that changed very little from year to year. The rhythm of medieval life was steady and predictable, shaped by the turning of the seasons, the round of the agricultural year, the daily and weekly patterns of work and rest and worship. The same tasks came round at the same times. The same festivals marked the same points in the year. The same prayers were said at the same hours. Life followed a deep and reassuring pattern, a rhythm as old as memory, changing very little from one year to the next. It was, in many ways, a profoundly ordered and predictable world. Consider how deeply this order ran through the medieval day. The bells that marked the hours of prayer sounded at the same times, day after day, ordering the whole community's day around a known and steady rhythm. The seasons brought their same tasks in their same order, the ploughing and the sowing, the haymaking and the harvest, each in its appointed time, so that a person always knew what work the turning year would bring. The festivals of the church fell on their fixed days, the same celebrations marking the same points of the year, every year, a reliable calendar of known and awaited occasions. Even the food followed the rhythm of the seasons and the fasts, so that certain times brought certain fare, in a pattern repeated year upon year. For most people, this deep order was simply the water they swam in, scarcely noticed. But for a mind that craved predictability, that found real peace in knowing what would come, this profound and reliable order might have been a quiet and continual comfort, a world that could be trusted not to spring too many surprises. We might wonder then, gently and without ever claiming to know for certain, whether this deep routine of medieval life might have suited some neurodivergent minds rather well, offering the very predictability and sameness that many autistic people find so comforting. Perhaps, for a mind that loved routine, the steady rhythm of the medieval year was a source of real peace, its reassuring sameness a comfort rather than a constraint. Perhaps the predictable round of tasks and seasons and prayers gave such a mind the security it needed, a world that could be known and relied upon. We cannot know for certain, of course, but it is a gentle and rather lovely thought that the ordered rhythm of the medieval world might have been, for some, a genuine comfort. Of course, the medieval world could also be desperately unpredictable in other ways, subject to sudden disruptions, to the failures of harvests, the coming of disease, the violence of the age, and these would have been hard for any mind that craved stability. We should not imagine the medieval world as a place of perfect security, for it was in many ways precarious and dangerous, and its sudden upheavals would have been genuinely difficult for those who needed the world to be predictable. But in its deep rhythms, its steady round of seasons and days, it offered a kind of routine that our own restless and ever-changing world has largely lost, and we may gently wonder whether some found real comfort in that ancient and reassuring pattern. Let that comforting rhythm settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the deep and focused mind and the passions that could absorb it entirely. One of the most remarkable and often most joyful characteristics woven into the autistic way of being is the capacity for deep and passionate focus, the ability to become utterly absorbed in a subject of interest, to pursue it with a depth and dedication that is truly extraordinary. This is a gift as much as a characteristic, and it is a wonderful thing to wonder about as we wander through the medieval world. Let us explore, gently, the deep and focused mind. Many autistic people have what are sometimes called deep or special interests, subjects that absorb them utterly, that they pursue with a passion and a focus and a depth of knowledge that is quite remarkable. Where others might have passing hobbies and casual interests, the autistic mind can become profoundly absorbed in a subject, learning everything about it, thinking about it constantly, pursuing it with a dedication that produces real mastery and expertise. This deep focus is one of the great gifts of the autistic mind, a capacity for concentration and absorption that can achieve extraordinary things, producing knowledge and skill and mastery of a very high order. It is a joyful thing, this deep focus, a source of real pleasure and real achievement. The medieval world, we might gently wonder, offered many places where such deep focus could find a home, many crafts and callings that rewarded exactly this kind of absorbed and dedicated attention. Consider the medieval craftsman, who might spend a lifetime mastering a single skill, pursuing his craft with a dedication and a depth that produced work of real beauty and quality. Consider the scholar, absorbed in his studies, the illuminator, bent over his intricate work, the mason, mastering the deep secrets of his craft. The medieval world was full of callings that rewarded deep and patient focus, that allowed a dedicated mind to pursue a single skill or subject to real mastery. We might wonder whether some of these deeply focused medieval craftsmen and scholars were minds of the kind we now recognize as autistic, finding in their absorbing work a natural home for their remarkable focus. There is something rather beautiful in this thought, in the image of a deeply focused medieval mind finding real fulfillment in a craft or a study that rewarded its particular gift for absorption. For a mind that loved to focus deeply, the medieval workshop or scriptorium or study might have been a place of genuine happiness, a place where the capacity for deep absorption was not a strangeness but a strength, valued and rewarded and put to good use. The deeply focused mind might have found, in the patient crafts and studies of the medieval world, a place where it could do what it did best, absorbed in its work, producing beauty and mastery through its remarkable focus. It is a lovely thing to imagine, this fulfillment found in focused work. We cannot know, of course, which particular medieval craftsmen or scholars were neurodivergent minds, and we must not pretend to, for we are wondering, not diagnosing. But we can say with confidence that the deep focus of the autistic mind is a real and remarkable gift, and that the medieval world offered many places where such focus could find a home and produce fine things. And we can wonder, gently and warmly, whether some of the beautiful and skilled work of the medieval world, the fine crafts and the patient studies and the intricate illuminations, was the product of minds that focused deeply in the way we now recognize as autistic. It is a thought that gives a new and gentle dignity to the deeply focused mind, in the medieval world and in our own. Let that deep focus settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the world of the senses, and how intensely it might have been felt. Among the most defining features of the autistic way of being is a particular relationship with the senses, an experience of sound and light and touch and smell and taste that is often far more intense than most people know. This is a profound part of many autistic lives, and it is a fascinating and rather moving thing to wonder about as we imagine the medieval world, which was, in its own way, a place of very particular sensory experience. Let us wander gently into the world of the senses. Many autistic people experience the senses with unusual intensity, so that sounds are louder, lights are brighter, textures are more powerful, smells are stronger than they are for most people. This heightened sensory experience can be overwhelming, so that a noisy, bright, crowded, chaotic environment becomes genuinely difficult to bear, a bombardment of sensation that others scarcely notice. A loud crowd, a bright and busy place, a scratchy fabric, a strong smell, these can be truly distressing to a sensitive autistic mind, sources of real discomfort and overwhelm. This sensory sensitivity is a defining feature of many autistic lives, shaping how the world is experienced in profound ways, and making some environments comforting and others genuinely hard to bear. The medieval world, we might gently wonder, would have offered its own particular mix of sensory experiences, some perhaps overwhelming, and some perhaps soothing to a sensitive mind. On the one hand, the medieval world could be intensely, chaotically sensory, a place of loud markets and crowded halls, of strong smells and harsh noises, of the general clamour and roughness of a world without any of the sensory calm we can now arrange. A crowded medieval market, or a noisy feasting hall, would have been a bombardment of sensation, potentially overwhelming to a sensitive mind. The medieval world could be a loud, smelly, chaotic place, and for a mind that felt the senses intensely, much of it might have been genuinely hard to bear. On the other hand, the medieval world also held places of profound sensory calm, quiet spaces of stillness and peace, that a sensitive mind might have found deeply soothing. Consider the hushed stillness of a great church, the quiet of a monastery, the peace of the fields and woods, the calm of a solitary craft pursued in a quiet corner. The medieval world, for all its clamour, also held deep quiet, places and moments of real stillness, where a sensitive mind might have found peace and refuge. We might wonder whether some neurodivergent people of the medieval world sought out these quiet places, these havens of sensory calm, finding in the stillness of the church or the peace of the fields a refuge from the overwhelming clamour of the busier world. It is a gentle and rather moving thought, this seeking of quiet refuge. We might wonder too whether the sensory intensity of some medieval experiences, the great beauty of a candle-lit church, the rich colours of an illumination, the sweetness of music, might have been felt with special power by a sensitive autistic mind, a source of joy as well as of overwhelm. For heightened senses can bring intense pleasure as well as intense discomfort, and the beauties of the medieval world, its music and colour and light, might have been felt with a special and joyful intensity by a mind that experienced the senses deeply. There is a real richness in this thought that the sensory world of the Middle Ages, in its beauty as well as its clamour, might have been felt with particular power by some of the minds within it. We might pause, too, on one small and gentle possibility, which is that a mind attuned to the fine detail of the senses might have found deep pleasure in things that others passed by without a glance. The exact way the light fell through a coloured window and laid its pools of colour on the stone floor, the particular hush of a great empty church, the way sound moved and settled in that vast quiet space, the precise pattern of frost on a cold morning, or the ordered rows of a well-kept garden, or the small repeated shapes carved into a wooden beam. For a mind that noticed such things keenly and loved them deeply, the medieval world held countless small sources of quiet joy, moments of beauty felt with an intensity that most would never know. And there is something rather lovely in imagining a differently wired medieval mind finding, in these small and overlooked beauties, a deep and private happiness, that the busier minds around it entirely missed. Let that world of the senses settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the honest and direct way of speaking that often comes with the autistic mind. A characteristic often woven into the autistic way of being, and one that is really rather admirable, is a deep and natural honesty, a directness of speech, a difficulty with the social pretenses and little untruths that others use so easily. This honest directness is a genuine virtue, though it could be received in various ways, and it is an interesting thing to wonder about as we imagine the medieval world. Let us wander gently into the matter of the honest tongue. Many autistic people are strikingly honest and direct, finding it difficult or distasteful to engage in the little social untruths, the polite pretenses, the white lies and flatteries that others use without a second thought. Where much of ordinary social life runs on a kind of gentle dishonesty, on saying what is expected rather than what is true, the autistic mind often prefers plain honesty, saying what it means and meaning what it says. This directness can sometimes be startling to others, who are used to the softening pretenses of ordinary talk, but it is at heart a real virtue, a genuine honesty and integrity that is quite admirable. The autistic tongue often speaks the plain truth, directly and without pretense, and there is something fine in that. We might wonder how such honest directness would have fared in the medieval world, and the answer, we may imagine, is that it would have been received in various ways, valued in some settings and misunderstood in others. In some contexts, honest and plain speech might have been genuinely valued, respected as a mark of integrity and trustworthiness, welcomed in a world that prized truth and plain dealing. A person known for always speaking the truth, for never dissembling or flattering, might have been respected and trusted, their honesty recognized as a real virtue. In a world that valued plain dealing and honest speech, the direct and truthful autistic tongue might have found real appreciation. In other settings, though, the same directness might have caused difficulty, for the medieval world, like our own, ran in part on social pretense and delicate courtesy, on the softening untruths that smooth the path of social life. A person who could not or would not engage in these pretenses, who spoke the plain truth where a gentler untruth was expected, might sometimes have caused offence or been thought rude or strange. The courtly world in particular, with its elaborate codes of courtesy and flattery, might have been difficult for a mind that preferred plain honesty, its subtle social games puzzling and distasteful. So the honest tongue might have been a difficulty as well as a virtue, depending on where and to whom it spoke. There is something rather admirable, though, in the image of the honest medieval mind, speaking the plain truth in a world of pretense, valuing integrity over flattery, saying what it meant in a world that often did not. Whether valued or misunderstood, the honest directness of such a mind was a real virtue, a genuine integrity that we may respect and admire. And we might wonder, gently, whether some of the plain-speaking, truth-telling people of the medieval world, the ones who would not flatter or dissemble, who spoke the truth where others would not, were minds of the kind we now recognize as autistic, bringing their natural honesty to a world that needed it as much then as now. It is a thought that honors the honest tongue, in the medieval world and in our own. Let that honest directness settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the love of patterns that so often delights the autistic mind. A characteristic that often brings the autistic mind real joy, and that produces some of its most remarkable gifts, is a deep love of patterns, an eye for order and structure and repetition, a delight in the underlying regularities of the world. This love of pattern is a genuine gift, and it is a wonderful thing to wonder about as we wander through the medieval world, which was, in its arts and crafts and learning, full of pattern and structure. Let us explore, gently, the love of patterns. Many autistic minds have a deep affinity for patterns, an eye that sees order and structure and repetition where others might not, a delight in the regularities and symmetries and systems that underlie the world. This love of pattern can show itself in many ways, in a fascination with numbers and systems, in a delight in music and its structures, in an eye for visual pattern and symmetry, in a mind that naturally seeks out order and regularity. It is a real gift, this love of pattern, for it allows the mind to see connections and structures that others miss, to find the hidden order in things, to work with pattern and system in ways that can produce real beauty and insight. The pattern-loving mind sees the world in a particular and often very fruitful way. The medieval world, we might gently wonder, offered many places where such a love of pattern could find both delight and useful employment, for it was a world rich in pattern and structure across its arts and crafts and learning. Consider the intricate patterns of medieval illumination, the geometric beauty of medieval architecture, the mathematical structures underlying medieval music, the elaborate patterns of medieval design and ornament. Consider the ordered systems of medieval learning, the careful structures of medieval craft, the patterns woven into medieval textiles and carved into medieval stone. The medieval world was full of pattern and structure, in its arts, its crafts, its music, its learning, and a mind that loved pattern might have found in all this much to delight in and much to contribute to. We might wonder then whether some of the beautiful patterned work of the medieval world, the intricate illuminations, and the geometric architecture, and the structured music, was the product of minds that loved pattern in the way we now recognize as autistic. Perhaps some of the medieval craftsmen and artists and scholars who worked so beautifully with pattern and structure were pattern-loving minds of exactly this kind, finding in their patterned work a natural home for their particular gift. The love of pattern that many autistic minds possess is exactly the kind of gift that could produce fine medieval illumination or elegant medieval design, and we might wonder whether some of this beautiful work flowed from such minds. It is a lovely thought, this connection between the pattern-loving mind and the patterned beauty of the medieval world. There is a real dignity in this thought, in the recognition that the love of pattern is a genuine gift, and that it might have contributed to some of the real beauty of the medieval world. For the pattern-loving mind, the medieval world of illumination and architecture and music offered a place where its gift could flourish and produce fine things, a home for its particular way of seeing, and we may honor the love of pattern in the medieval world and in our own as a real and valuable gift, a different way of seeing that reveals the hidden order of things and produces real beauty. Let that love of patterns settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the ordered and peaceful world of the monastery. Of all the settings the medieval world offered, few seem, to our gentle wondering, so well suited to certain neurodivergent minds as the monastery, that ordered and peaceful place of routine and quiet and purpose. For the monastic life combined so many of the things that some autistic minds find most comforting, and it is a fascinating and rather moving place to pause in our wander. Let us step gently into the ordered world of the monastery. The monastic life was, above all, a life of deep and reassuring routine, its days shaped by an unchanging round of prayer and work and rest that followed the same pattern day after day, year after year. The monastery ran on a fixed and reliable rhythm, the hours of prayer marked out through the day and night, the tasks and duties following a known and settled order, the whole life shaped by a rule that governed every part of the day. This was a life of profound routine, of deep predictability, its pattern fixed and reliable and unchanging, offering exactly the reassuring sameness that many autistic minds find so comforting. For a mind that loved routine, the ordered life of the monastery might have been a place of real peace. The monastery also offered quiet, a refuge of stillness and calm, quite different from the clamour of the busy world, a place where a sensitive mind might have found relief from the overwhelming sensory bombardment of ordinary life. Much of the monastic day was spent in silence or near silence, in quiet work and quiet prayer, in an atmosphere of calm and stillness that was carefully preserved. For a mind that found the noise and chaos of the world overwhelming, this monastic quiet might have been a genuine refuge, a place where the senses could rest and the mind could find peace. The stillness of the cloister, the quiet of the cell, the calm of the ordered day, these might have been deeply soothing to a sensitive neurodivergent mind. And the monastery offered purpose and place, a meaningful role in a valued community, a way of life that gave dignity and belonging to those who followed it, whatever their particular way of being. The monastic life was a respected calling, a purposeful and meaningful way of living, and it offered a place and a role to those who entered it. For a neurodivergent mind that might have struggled to find its place in the ordinary world, the monastery might have offered a valued role, a meaningful purpose, a community to belong to, on terms that suited its particular gifts and needs. The deeply focused could pursue their studies and crafts, the routine-loving could find comfort in the ordered day, the quiet-seeking could find their refuge, all within a respected and purposeful way of life. We might wonder then, gently and without ever claiming to know, whether the monasteries of the medieval world were home to a good many neurodivergent minds, drawn to the routine and quiet and purpose that the monastic life offered. Perhaps the monastery was, for some autistic minds, a genuine haven, a place where the very things they needed, routine and quiet and meaningful work, were built into the fabric of the life. It is a rather beautiful thought, this image of the monastery as a refuge for the differently wired mind, a place where such a mind might find peace and purpose and belonging. We cannot know for certain, but it is a gentle and moving possibility that the ordered life of the monastery was, for some, a genuine home. Let that ordered peace settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the craftsman at his bench, absorbed in his skilled and patient work. If the monastery offered one kind of home to certain neurodivergent minds, the craftsman's bench offered another, for the skilled crafts of the medieval world rewarded exactly the kind of deep, patient, focused, repetitive work in which some autistic minds find real satisfaction and real mastery. Let us pause gently at the craftsman's bench and wonder about the minds that might have worked there. The skilled crafts of the medieval world required deep and patient mastery, the learning of a single trade over many years, the perfecting of a skill through long and dedicated practice. The medieval craftsman spent his life mastering his craft, whether it was working metal or wood or leather or stone, whether it was weaving or carving or building or making. This was work that rewarded deep focus and patient dedication, the absorbed pursuit of mastery over a single skill, the kind of concentrated attention that some autistic minds possess in abundance. The craftsman's bench was a place for focused, patient, skilled work, and a mind that loved to focus deeply might have found in it a natural and satisfying home. Much skilled craft work was also, by its nature, repetitive, involving the same actions performed again and again, the same patterns and processes repeated in the making of each piece. And this repetition, which some might find tedious, could be genuinely satisfying to a mind that found comfort in the familiar and the predictable, a soothing rhythm of known and repeated action. For a mind that loved sameness and pattern, the repetitive rhythms of skilled craft work might have been deeply satisfying, a comforting and absorbing flow of familiar action, producing beautiful and useful things. The repetition of the craft, far from being tedious, might have been a source of real comfort and pleasure to such a mind. The craftsman's calling also offered a valued place in society, a respected role and a meaningful purpose, for the skilled crafts were honoured and their products needed and prized. To be a skilled craftsman was to have a respected place in the medieval world, a valued role that gave dignity and belonging, whatever one's particular way of being. For a neurodivergent mind, the craft offered not only satisfying work, but a valued place in the community, a way of belonging and contributing on terms that suited its particular gifts. The craftsman was judged by his work, by the quality of what he made, and a mind that could produce fine work through its deep focus and patient care would have been valued for exactly that, whatever its other differences. This last point is worth resting on gently, for it may be one of the kindest features of the medieval craft world. A craftsman did not need to be charming or quick with a jest, or easy in a crowd. He needed to make good things. The work spoke for itself, and spoke loudest of all. A quiet man who said little, but turned out beautiful work, would be respected for that work, his quietness no barrier at all to his standing. A man absorbed in his craft to the exclusion of much else might be thought a little single-minded, but if the results were fine, that single-mindedness was his making rather than his undoing. In a world that valued the made thing so highly, the mind that could make well had a sure path to respect and belonging, whatever its social ease or unease. And for a differently wired mind, that might have been a real gift, a way to be valued for one's strengths rather than measured by one's struggles. We might wonder then whether the workshops of the medieval world were home to many neurodivergent minds, drawn to the deep focus, the satisfying repetition, and the valued place that skilled craft offered. Perhaps some of the fine work of the medieval craftsman, the beautiful and skillfully made things that have come down to us, was the product of minds that focused deeply and worked patiently in the way we now recognize as autistic. It is a lovely thought, this image of the neurodivergent craftsman, absorbed in his skilled and satisfying work, producing beauty through his particular gifts, valued for what he could make. We cannot know for certain, but we may wonder warmly and honor the deep focus and patient skill that produced so much of the beauty of the medieval world. Let that patient craft settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the scholar and the scribe, bent over their careful work. Alongside the craftsman at his bench, the medieval world offered another home for the deeply focused and detail-loving mind, the world of learning and letters, of the scholar absorbed in his studies, and the scribe bent over his careful copying. These were callings that rewarded exactly the kind of patient, precise, deeply focused attention that some autistic minds possess, and they are a lovely place to continue our wondering. Let us turn gently to the scholar and the scribe. The work of the medieval scholar required deep and patient study, the absorbed pursuit of learning, the mastery of difficult texts and complex ideas through long and dedicated attention. The scholar spent his life in study, absorbed in his books and his thinking, pursuing knowledge with a dedication and a depth that required real powers of focus and concentration. This was work that rewarded exactly the kind of deep absorption that some autistic minds possess, the capacity to focus intently on a subject, to pursue it deeply, to master its complexities through patient attention. For a deeply focused mind, the scholar's life of study might have been a place of real fulfillment, a home for its particular gift for absorbed and dedicated attention. The work of the scribe, meanwhile, required extraordinary patience and precision. The careful copying of texts by hand, letter by letter and line by line, with an attention to detail that could not falter. The scribe spent long hours bent over his work, copying out texts with great care, attending to every letter and every detail, producing beautiful and accurate manuscripts through patient and precise labor. This was work that rewarded exactly the kind of careful, detailed, patient attention that some autistic minds possess in abundance. The capacity to focus on fine detail, to work with precision and care, to sustain patient attention over long periods. For a mind that loved detail and precision, the scribe's careful work might have been deeply satisfying, a natural home for its particular gifts. The copying and study of the medieval world also involved a great deal of repetition and routine, the same careful work performed day after day, the same patient attention brought to each new text and each new line. And this steady, repetitive, patient work might have suited a mind that found comfort in routine and satisfaction in careful attention, a soothing and absorbing rhythm of known and valued labor. The scholar and the scribe worked in quiet and ordered surroundings, often within the peaceful routine of the monastery, pursuing their patient work in an atmosphere of calm and focus. For a neurodivergent mind, this quiet, ordered, detailed work might have been genuinely congenial, a place where its gifts could flourish and its needs be met. We might wonder, then, whether many of the scholars and scribes of the medieval world, the patient copyists and the absorbed students, were minds of the kind we now recognize as autistic, finding in their careful and focused work a natural home for their particular gifts. Perhaps some of the beautiful manuscripts and careful scholarship of the medieval world, the patient copying and the deep learning that preserved and advanced human knowledge, flowed from such minds. It is a thought that gives a gentle dignity to the scholar and the scribe, and to the neurodivergent minds that might have been among them, contributing through their deep focus and careful attention to the learning and beauty of their age. Let that careful work settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the solitary life, and the value the medieval world placed upon it. The medieval world, unlike our own, placed a real and honoured value on solitude, on the life lived apart, and this offered a particular and rather remarkable place to those who found the crowded social world difficult and the quiet of solitude a relief. For a mind that found company tiring and solitude restful, the medieval respect for the solitary life offered something our own busy and social world rarely does. Let us wander gently into the value of solitude. The medieval world honoured the solitary religious life, the calling of the hermit and the anchorite, those who withdrew from the world to live apart in prayer and contemplation. This was a respected and even revered way of life, the solitary devotion of those who chose to live alone, apart from the bustle of ordinary society, in quiet and prayerful seclusion. The hermit in his remote cell, the anchorite enclosed in a small room beside a church, these were figures of real respect, their solitary devotion honoured and admired. The medieval world saw the solitary life not as a strange withdrawal, but as a high and holy calling, a valued way of living apart. This honouring of solitude offered a real place to those who found the social world difficult, and solitude a relief, a socially valued role for a way of being that our own world often struggles to accommodate. For a mind that found company overwhelming and solitude restful, that needed time and space apart from the demands of social life, the solitary religious calling offered a respected and meaningful way to live exactly as such a mind might wish. To withdraw from the crowd, to live quietly apart, to spend one's days in solitary contemplation, was not, in the medieval world, a strange or suspect thing, but a recognized and honored calling. This gave a real and valued place to those who needed solitude, a place our own social world rarely provides. We might wonder then whether some of those who embraced the solitary religious life were neurodivergent minds, drawn to a calling that offered exactly the solitude and quiet they needed, on terms that the medieval world honored and respected. Perhaps, for some autistic minds, the life of the hermit or the anchorite was a genuine refuge, a way to live apart from the overwhelming social world in a manner that was not only accepted but revered. It is a rather remarkable thought that the medieval world offered a valued and honored place to those who needed solitude, a place where the need for quiet and apartness was understood as a holy calling rather than a strange affliction. We cannot know for certain, but it is a gentle and moving possibility. There is something genuinely valuable in this, in the recognition that the medieval world, for all it lacked in understanding, offered certain honored places to those who were different, certain valued roles for ways of being that our own world can struggle to accommodate. The solitary life, respected and revered, gave a real place to those who needed solitude, and this reminds us that different ages accommodate difference in different ways, and that the medieval world, in this respect at least, may have offered something our own often does not. We may honour the solitary life and the neurodivergent minds that might have found in it a genuine home as one of the ways the medieval world made room for difference. And there is a gentle lesson in it for us too, in an age that so often treats solitude as a problem to be fixed, and sociability as the measure of a healthy life. The medieval world knew that some souls are made for quiet and apartness, and it gave them an honoured place rather than pressing them to be otherwise. Perhaps we might learn a little from that, and make more room, in our own busy and crowded age, for those who need their solitude and find their peace apart. Let that valued solitude settle gently in the dark. We turn now, gently, to the ways the medieval world tried to make sense of the minds it could not name. The medieval world, having no concept of autism, made sense of the minds that worked differently through the frameworks it did possess, and chief among these was the lens of faith, the deeply religious way of seeing that shaped all of medieval life. This religious interpretation of difference could be gentle or harsh, wise or mistaken, and it is a fascinating and careful thing to wonder about. Let us explore, gently, how difference was understood through the lens of faith. The medieval world saw everything through the lens of religion, and it made sense of unusual minds and behaviours in religious terms, interpreting difference as holiness or as its opposite, as blessing or as affliction, according to how it appeared. Where we would see a neurodivergent mind, the medieval world might see a soul touched by God, a holy innocent, a person of special spiritual significance, or alternatively, a soul troubled or afflicted, according to the particular case and the particular interpretation. The religious framework offered various ways of understanding difference, some kind and some less so, and the same unusual person might be seen very differently depending on how their difference was read. In its kinder interpretations, the medieval world could see certain kinds of difference as a mark of holiness or special grace, treating the unusual person with a particular respect or tenderness. The idea of the holy innocent, the simple soul specially beloved of God, offered a gentle way of understanding some who were different, a framework that could bring respect and care rather than suspicion. Some unusual people were regarded as touched by the divine, their difference seen as a mark of special grace, and this could bring them a certain protection and even reverence. This was, in its way, a kind of acceptance, a framework that could make room for difference by understanding it as holy, and it might sometimes have served the neurodivergent well. We must be careful here, of course, and not pretend that these religious interpretations were the same as understanding, or that they mapped neatly onto what we now recognize as autism, for they did not. The medieval religious frameworks were their own thing, shaped by their own beliefs and assumptions, and they did not correspond to our modern understanding of the mind. We cannot say that the holy innocent was really an autistic person, or that medieval religious categories were secret descriptions of neurodivergence, for that would be to force our own understanding onto a very different way of seeing. What we can say is that the medieval world made sense of difference through the lens of faith, and that this lens could sometimes bring acceptance and care, and sometimes could not. For the religious lens could also be harsh, interpreting difference as affliction or as something darker, and we shall come gently to those harder interpretations in a moment. But we should note first that the medieval religious framework, for all its limitations, sometimes offered a genuine kindness, a way of making room for difference by seeing it as holy, that could bring real respect and care to those who might otherwise have been rejected. This reminds us that the medieval world, though it lacked our understanding, was not without its own ways of accommodating difference, some of which were genuinely gentle. We may recognize both the limitations and the occasional kindness of the medieval religious lens, as one of the ways that difficult world tried to make sense of the minds it could not name. Let that lens of faith settle gently in the dark, We turn now, with care and gentleness, to the harder truth of when the world misunderstood. We come now, gently and with real care, to a harder part of our story, for we cannot honestly wonder about the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world without acknowledging that a world without understanding could also be a world of misunderstanding, and that difference, unrecognized and unnamed, could sometimes bring difficulty and pain. We shall treat this soberly and without dwelling on anything distressing, for our purpose is understanding and compassion, not the cataloguing of cruelty. Let us wander, gently, into the harder truth of misunderstanding. A world that had no understanding of autism was, inevitably, a world that could misunderstand the autistic mind, misreading its differences, failing to grasp its needs, interpreting its behaviors in ways that could bring difficulty rather than help. Where we might now recognize a sensory difficulty, a need for routine, a different way of communicating, the medieval world, lacking any such understanding, might see only strangeness or rudeness or willful difficulty or something troubling. Without the framework to understand, the medieval world could misjudge the neurodivergent mind, and this misjudgment could bring real hardship to those who were simply different in ways their world could not comprehend. This is the sober truth that honesty requires us to acknowledge. This misunderstanding could bring various difficulties, from simple social friction to more serious troubles, as a mind that did not fit the expectations of its world met with incomprehension and sometimes rejection. A person whose differences were misread might face impatience or mockery or exclusion, might struggle to find their place, might be misjudged and mistreated by those who could not understand them. We shall not dwell on the harsher possibilities, for they are painful and our night is meant to be gentle, but we should acknowledge with compassion that a world without understanding could be a hard place for those who were different, and that some neurodivergent people of the medieval world surely faced real difficulty and pain. This is a sorrowful truth, and we hold it gently and with sympathy. Yet even here, we may find reasons for a gentle hope, for many neurodivergent people surely found understanding and acceptance too, from families who loved them and communities that made room for them, whatever the wider world's incomprehension. Not every neurodivergent person met only misunderstanding. Many surely found love and acceptance close to home, from families who cherished them as they were, from communities that found them a place, from the ordinary human kindness that has always existed alongside human cruelty. We should not imagine that the medieval neurodivergent life was only one of suffering, for it surely also held love and acceptance and belonging, the ordinary human warmth that has always made room for difference. The picture is not only dark, and we may hold on to the light within it, and we may take, from this harder part of our story, a real appreciation of why understanding matters, of the difference it makes to recognize and accept the differently wired mind, rather than to misjudge it. The difficulties that misunderstanding could bring remind us of the value of understanding, of how much it means to see the neurodivergent mind clearly and to accept it with warmth. If the medieval world's incomprehension sometimes brought pain, then our own growing understanding is something genuinely precious, a real advance that spares people the hardship of being misjudged for who they are. We may hold the sober truth of medieval misunderstanding alongside a real gratitude for how far understanding has come, and a real commitment to carrying it further. Let that sober reflection settle gently in the dark. We turn now, more gently, to the child who was different, and how such a child might have grown. Let us turn now, gently and tenderly, to the beginning of a life, to the child who was different, and wonder how such a child might have been seen and cared for in the medieval world. For every neurodivergent adult was first a neurodivergent child, and the story of how a differently wired child might have grown up in that distant age is a moving and important part of our gentle wandering. Let us wander softly into the world of the child who was different, A child whose mind worked differently would have shown that difference early, as such children often do, in their particular ways of playing and speaking and relating, in their particular needs and sensitivities and gifts. The differently wired child might have been quieter or more intense than other children, might have had particular passions and particular fears, might have needed more routine or found the world more overwhelming, might have related to others in their own particular way. These differences would have been visible early, marking the child out as different from their fellows, in ways that the medieval world, lacking any understanding of autism, would have made sense of as best it could. The neurodivergent child was there from the start, different from early on, in a world that had no name for their difference. How such a child was treated would have depended greatly on their particular family and community, on the love and understanding they found close to home, for it is here, in the family, that a child's early life is shaped. A child fortunate in their family might have found real love and acceptance, parents who cherished them as they were, who made room for their differences, who protected and nurtured them, despite not understanding them in our terms. The ordinary love of parents for their children has always existed, and many neurodivergent medieval children were surely loved and accepted by families who cherished them, whatever their differences, finding in that love the security and acceptance that every child needs. This is a warm and hopeful thought, this image of the loved and accepted different child. The medieval family might also have found ways to accommodate the different child, to work with their particular needs and gifts, to find them a place and a role that suited them as they grew. A wise family might have noticed what their different child was good at and drawn to, might have steered them toward work that suited their gifts, might have found ways to accommodate their needs and sensitivities. In a world of practical necessity, families found roles for their children according to their abilities, and a neurodivergent child might have been guided toward the crafts or callings that suited their particular mind, finding a place that fit them. This practical accommodation, this finding of a suitable place, might have served many neurodivergent children well, whatever the absence of formal understanding. Of course, not every different child was so fortunate, and we should acknowledge with sympathy that some faced misunderstanding and difficulty even in childhood, even close to home, as we have gently noted. But we may hope and reasonably believe that many neurodivergent medieval children found real love and acceptance and a place that suited them, growing up cherished by families who made room for their differences, even without understanding them in our terms. The story of the different child is not only a sorrowful one, but also, in many cases, a story of love and acceptance and belonging, of families who cherished their children as they were, and we may honor the love that surely surrounded many a different medieval child, the ordinary human warmth that made room for difference across the centuries. Let that tender picture settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the many different ways that people connect and communicate. A characteristic often woven into the autistic way of being is a different way of communicating and connecting with others, a way that does not always follow the usual patterns of social interaction, and that is often misunderstood by those who expect the ordinary forms. This different way of connecting is an important part of many autistic lives, and it is a thoughtful thing to wonder about as we imagine the medieval world. Let us explore, gently, communication in other ways. Many autistic people communicate and connect differently from most, finding the usual unwritten rules of social interaction puzzling or tiresome, relating to others in their own particular ways rather than the expected ones. The subtle social dance of ordinary interaction, the unspoken rules and expectations, the reading of hints and implications and social cues can be genuinely difficult for the autistic mind, which often prefers directness and clarity to the subtle indirections of ordinary social life. This does not mean that autistic people do not wish to connect, for many deeply do, but that they connect in their own ways, on their own terms, finding the usual social forms difficult and preferring other ways of relating. The autistic way of connecting is different, not absent, a matter of other forms rather than no forms at all. We might wonder how these different ways of connecting would have fared in the medieval world, and the answer, we may imagine, is that they would have met with the same mix of acceptance and difficulty that they meet with today. In a world that ran, like our own, on subtle social interaction, on unspoken rules and expectations, a mind that found these difficult might sometimes have struggled, might have been misread or misunderstood, might have found the social world puzzling and tiring. But such a mind might also have found genuine connection in other ways, through shared work and shared interest, through the bonds of family and community, through forms of relating that did not depend on the subtle social dance. The different way of connecting might have found its own paths in the medieval world, as it does in our own. The medieval world offered many forms of connection that did not depend on subtle social performance, many ways of belonging that were founded on shared work, shared faith, shared life, rather than on the reading of social cues. To work alongside others at a common task, to worship together, to share in the life of a family or a community, these were forms of belonging that a mind which found social performance difficult might have managed and valued, connecting through shared activity rather than social subtlety. The medieval world's strong communities, its shared work and shared faith, might have offered such minds real ways of belonging that did not depend on the social skills they found difficult. Connection through shared life, rather than social performance, might have suited some neurodivergent minds well. We might wonder too whether the deep loyalty and sincerity that often characterize autistic connection might have been valued in the medieval world, where such qualities were prized. For autistic people, though they may find social performance difficult, are often deeply loyal, sincere, and steadfast in their attachments, connecting deeply where they connect at all. These are qualities that the medieval world, with its emphasis on loyalty and fidelity, might have genuinely valued, so that the sincere and steadfast connection of a neurodivergent mind might have been appreciated even where its social style was unusual. There is a real warmth in this thought, that the deep and sincere connection of which the autistic mind is capable might have found genuine appreciation in the medieval world. Let that different connection settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the keeper of deep knowledge, the mind that knew one thing completely. We have spoken of the deep focus of the autistic mind and the passions that can absorb it, but there is a particular fruit of this focus that deserves its own gentle attention, the deep and complete knowledge that such a mind can accumulate, the mastery of a subject so thorough that the person becomes a genuine keeper of knowledge and lore. This is a real gift, and a valued one in the medieval world, and it is a lovely thing to wonder about. Let us turn gently to the keeper of deep knowledge. The deep focus of the autistic mind often produces a deep and thorough knowledge of its subjects of interest, an accumulated mastery so complete that the person becomes a true expert, knowing their subject in extraordinary depth and detail. Where the passing interest gathers only a little knowledge, the deep and absorbing interest of the autistic mind gathers a great deal, building over time into a mastery of remarkable thoroughness and depth. Such a mind might know everything about its subject, might have gathered and retained a vast store of knowledge and detail, might be a genuine authority on the thing it loves. This deep and complete knowledge is a real fruit of the autistic capacity for focus, a genuine expertise built through passionate and sustained attention. In the medieval world, we might gently wonder, such deep knowledge would have been genuinely valuable, for in a world without our modern ways of storing and finding information, the person who knew things deeply was a real and precious resource. Consider the herbalist who knew every plant and its uses, the person who held the lore of a craft or a place or a tradition, the keeper of knowledge who remembered what others had forgotten. In a world that depended on memory and personal knowledge, The deep and thorough knowledge of a focused mind was a genuine treasure, a store of valuable information held in a single remarkable head. The keeper of deep knowledge was a valued person in the medieval world, and a mind that gathered knowledge deeply might have found real appreciation. We might wonder whether some of the great keepers of medieval knowledge, the herbalists and lawmasters, and those who held the deep knowledge of their crafts and traditions, were minds of the kind we now recognize as autistic, finding in their deep knowledge a valued place and purpose. Perhaps some of the medieval world's deep knowledge, its herbal lore and craft secrets and remembered traditions, was held and preserved by minds that gathered knowledge in the passionate and thorough way of the autistic mind. It is a lovely thought, this image of the neurodivergent keeper of knowledge, valued for the deep mastery that their focused mind had gathered, contributing to their community through the treasure of their knowledge. We cannot know for certain, but we may wonder warmly. There is a real dignity in this, in the recognition that the deep knowledge which the autistic mind can gather is a genuine gift, valued in the medieval world, as it is valued in our own. For the keeper of deep knowledge served their community through their remarkable mastery, holding and preserving valuable knowledge that others depended upon, contributing through their particular gift for deep and thorough learning. And we may honor the keeper of deep knowledge, in the medieval world and in our own, as a real and valuable role, a way in which the deeply focused mind has always contributed to the human community. Let that deep knowledge settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the gift of attention to detail. Closely related to the deep focus and love of pattern we have already wondered about, is another characteristic gift of many autistic minds: a remarkable attention to detail, an eye that notices the small things others miss, a care for precision and exactness that can produce work of extraordinary quality. This is a real and valuable gift, and it is a lovely thing to wonder about as we imagine the medieval world and its finely made things. Let us explore, gently, the gift of attention to detail. Many autistic minds have a remarkable eye for detail, noticing the small things that others overlook, attending to precision and exactness with a care that can be quite extraordinary. Where others might see only the general shape of things, the detail-loving mind sees the particulars, the small features and fine points, the exact details that make up the whole. This attention to detail is a real gift, allowing such a mind to notice what others miss, to work with precision and exactness, to produce and appreciate fine and careful work. It is a capacity for seeing and caring about the small things, the details and particulars, that can produce work of remarkable quality and reveal what others would overlook. The medieval world, we might gently wonder, offered many places where such attention to detail could produce beautiful and valuable work, for it was a world of fine and careful craftsmanship in which detail mattered greatly. Consider the intricate detail of medieval illumination, the fine precision of medieval metalwork and carving, the careful exactness of medieval building and making. The medieval world prized fine and detailed work that required exactly the kind of careful attention to small things that some autistic minds possess in abundance. A mind that attended closely to detail might have produced work of remarkable quality and precision, and found in the detailed crafts of the medieval world a natural home for its particular gift. We might wonder, then, whether some of the exquisitely detailed work of the medieval world, the fine illuminations and precise carvings and careful craftsmanship that we still admire, was the product of minds that attended to detail in the way we now recognize as autistic. Perhaps some of the medieval world's most finely made and detailed things flowed from minds that saw and cared about detail with special power, producing beauty through their remarkable eye for the small and precise. It is a lovely thought, this connection between the detail-loving mind and the finely detailed beauty of the medieval world, and it gives a gentle dignity to the gift of attention to detail. We cannot know for certain which particular works flowed from such minds, but we may wonder warmly and admire the detailed beauty that such attention can produce. There is a real value in this gift, both in the medieval world and in our own, for the attention to detail that many autistic minds possess produces work of quality and precision, and notices what others would miss. Whether in the fine crafts of the medieval world or in the careful work of our own age, the detail-loving mind contributes something genuinely valuable, a precision and a care, and an eye for the small things that produces excellence and catches what others overlook. And we may honor the gift of attention to detail, in the medieval world and in our own, as a real and valuable contribution of the differently wired mind, a capacity for precision and care that has always enriched the human world. Let that careful attention settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the wide and varied range of the spectrum, the quiet and the intense alike. As we have wandered through the various characteristics that can be woven into the autistic way of being, we should pause to remember something important, that autism is a spectrum, a wide and varied range of ways of being, and that no two autistic people are quite alike. This variety is essential to understanding autism truly, and it reminds us that the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world would have been as varied as neurodivergent minds today. Let us reflect gently on the quiet and the intense, and all the range between. Autism, as we have noted, is often described as a spectrum, and this means that it shows itself in an enormous variety of ways, differently in every person, so that autistic people are as varied as any other group of human beings. Some autistic people are quiet and reserved, others intense and expressive. Some are deeply verbal, others less so. Some have particular gifts in one area, others in quite another. Some find certain things easy that others find hard. The autistic spectrum encompasses a vast range of ways of being, united by certain common threads, but varying enormously in how those threads are woven together. There is no single autistic way of being, no one type of autistic person, but rather a great and varied range, as diverse as humanity itself. This variety means that the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world would have been just as varied, showing their difference in countless different ways, finding their places in countless different callings and communities. The quiet, reserved neurodivergent mind might have found one kind of place, the intense, expressive one another, the deeply focused craftsman one path, the pattern-loving scholar another, the solitude-seeking hermit yet another. The variety of the spectrum means that there was no single medieval neurodivergent experience, no one way that such minds lived, but rather a great range of different lives and paths, as varied as the minds themselves. We should not imagine a single type, but a rich diversity, as many different neurodivergent lives as there were neurodivergent people. This variety also reminds us to be humble and careful in our wandering, for we cannot reduce the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world to a single type or a simple story, any more than we can reduce autistic people today to a single kind. The richness and variety of the spectrum means that our wandering must be broad and generous, imagining not one medieval neurodivergent life, but many, not a single experience, but a great range of them. We must resist the temptation to a single simple picture, and hold instead the rich variety of ways that neurodivergent minds might have lived in the medieval world, as varied as the minds themselves. This humility and breadth is essential to wondering truly and respectfully about the differently wired minds of the past. And this variety is, in itself, a rather beautiful thing, a reminder of the rich diversity of human minds, in the medieval world as in our own, the great and wonderful range of ways that a person can be. The autistic spectrum, in all its variety, is part of the larger variety of humankind, the wonderful diversity of minds and ways of being that makes up the human family. And the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world, in all their variety, were part of that rich human diversity, adding their many different ways of being to the great range of medieval humanity. We may celebrate this variety, this rich diversity of minds, as one of the beautiful things about humanity in the medieval world and in every age. Let that rich variety settle gently in the dark. We turn now to those whose difference was most easily overlooked. Within the wide variety of the autistic spectrum, there are some whose difference is more easily overlooked than others, whose particular way of being autistic is quieter or less obvious, and who may go unrecognized even today. Among these, notably, are many autistic women and girls, whose autism can present differently and be more easily missed. This is an important part of understanding autism truly, and a thoughtful thing to wonder about as we imagine the medieval world. Let us reflect gently on the overlooked. Autism can present differently in different people, and in particular, it can present differently in women and girls, in ways that are more easily overlooked or missed, so that many autistic women and girls go unrecognized. The particular ways that autism can show itself in women and girls, the different patterns it can take, have historically been less recognized and understood, so that many autistic women have gone through life unrecognized, their difference overlooked or misunderstood. This is a real and important feature of autism, that it does not always show itself in the expected ways, and that some autistic people, particularly women and girls, are more easily overlooked than others. Recognizing this is essential to understanding autism truly and fully. We might wonder then about the overlooked neurodivergent people of the medieval world, the ones whose difference was quieter or less obvious, who might have gone unrecognized even in their own time, as some go unrecognized even now. Among these might have been many neurodivergent medieval women whose difference, presenting in less obvious ways, might have been overlooked or misunderstood, folded into the general expectations of their world. The overlooked neurodivergent person of the medieval world, the one whose difference was quiet and easily missed, is a poignant figure to imagine, present but unrecognized, different but overlooked, living their particular way of being without it ever being seen or named. This is a gentle and rather moving thought, this image of the overlooked. Such overlooked neurodivergent people might have found their own quiet ways of living with their difference, managing the demands of their world through their own strategies and accommodations, coping in ways that kept their difference hidden or unremarked. Many autistic people, then as now, might have learned to mask their differences, to manage the social world through effort and strategy, to fit in as best they could, while carrying their particular way of being quietly within. This masking and managing, this quiet coping with an unrecognized difference, might have been the experience of many overlooked neurodivergent people in the medieval world, as it is for many today. It is a real effort, this managing of an unrecognized difference, and we may feel real sympathy for those who carried it, then as now. There is something important in remembering the overlooked, in extending our gentle wondering to include not only the obviously different, but also the quietly different, the ones whose neurodivergence was easily missed. For the overlooked neurodivergent people of the medieval world were there too, present in every community, living their particular way of being without recognition, and they deserve their place in our wondering as much as any. And remembering them reminds us, in our own time, to look for the overlooked, to recognize that autism does not always show itself in the expected ways, and to make room for the quietly different as well as the obviously so. Let that thought of the overlooked settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the ways that neurodivergent minds might have found their place. As we have wandered through the many callings and communities of the medieval world, a gentle theme has emerged that deserves its own reflection. The finding of a place, the way in which neurodivergent minds might have found roles and niches that suited them, where their particular gifts were valued and their particular needs accommodated. This finding of a place is a hopeful and important part of our wondering. Let us reflect gently on how such minds might have found their place. We have seen that the medieval world, for all it lacked in understanding, offered many callings and roles that might have suited neurodivergent minds, from the ordered life of the monastery to the focused work of the craft and the study, from the honored solitude of the hermit to the valued knowledge of the keeper of law. These were places where the particular gifts of the neurodivergent mind, its deep focus, its love of pattern and routine, its attention to detail, its capacity for solitude and deep knowledge, might have been valued and put to good use. The medieval world, in its variety of callings, offered many niches where a differently wired mind might have found a home, a role that suited its particular way of being. This finding of a suitable niche is one of the ways that neurodivergent people have always managed to find their place. The medieval world, moreover, judged people largely by what they could do, by their work and their contribution, in a way that might have served neurodivergent minds well, allowing them to be valued for their gifts, whatever their social differences. In a world of practical necessity, where what mattered was often the quality of one's work and the value of one's contribution, a mind that could produce fine work or hold valuable knowledge might have been appreciated for exactly that, its social differences overlooked in favor of its useful gifts. This practical valuing of contribution, this judging by what one could do, might have offered neurodivergent minds a real place, a way of being valued and belonging that did not depend on social conformity. The medieval world's practical bent might, in this respect, have served the differently wired mind rather well. This finding of a place was not, of course, guaranteed, and we should not imagine that every neurodivergent mind found its niche, for many surely struggled, as we have gently acknowledged. But we may reasonably believe that many did find their place, drawn or guided toward callings that suited them, valued for their particular gifts, accommodated in their particular needs, finding a role and a belonging that fit their way of being. The finding of a place was a real possibility in the medieval world, and many neurodivergent minds surely found theirs in the craft or the cloister or the study or the solitary cell, in the roles that suited their particular gifts. This is a hopeful thought, this image of the neurodivergent mind finding its place and its purpose. We might dwell for a moment on how much this finding of a place can mean, for it is not a small thing. To have a role that suits one's mind, work that fits one's gifts, a purpose that draws on one's strengths rather than exposing one's difficulties, is a deep and steadying good for any person, and perhaps especially for one whose way of being sets them a little apart. The right place can transform a life, turning what might have been a source of struggle into a source of pride and contribution. The mind that finds the noisy world overwhelming but comes alive in quiet, patient work. The mind that struggles with idle chatter but shines when the talk turns to the thing it knows deeply. The mind that finds the unpredictable exhausting but flourishes in a settled routine. Each of these, given the right place, can move from the margins to a real and valued center. And so the finding of a place is not merely a matter of getting by, but of a life turning toward fulfillment. And it is a thing worth wishing for every mind, in the medieval world and in our own. There is a real encouragement in this, in the recognition that neurodivergent minds have always found ways to find their place, to contribute their gifts, and find their belonging, even in a world that did not understand them. For the finding of a place is something that neurodivergent people have always managed, across all the ages, drawn toward the roles that suited them, valued for their gifts, finding their belonging in the callings that fit their minds. And this reminds us, in our own time, of the importance of making places for different minds, of recognizing and valuing their gifts, of accommodating their needs, so that they may find their place as neurodivergent people have always sought to do. Let that finding of a place settle gently in the dark. We turn now, with honesty and humility, to the real limits of what we can know. We have wandered far and warmly through our gentle wandering tonight, imagining how neurodivergent minds might have lived in the medieval world, and it is time now to pause, with honesty and humility, and acknowledge clearly the real limits of what we can know. For all our warm imagining, we must be truthful about how little we can truly say for certain, and this honesty is itself a kind of respect. Let us reflect, gently and truthfully, on why we cannot truly know. The first and most important limit is that we cannot diagnose the dead, cannot reach back across the centuries and know for certain how any particular medieval mind was made, cannot say with confidence that this or that historical person was autistic. Autism is a modern understanding, applied through careful observation of living people, and it cannot be reliably applied to the dead, to people we cannot observe or know, across a great gulf of time, and with only the faintest of evidence. To claim that we can diagnose particular historical figures with autism is to claim more than we can know, to force our modern understanding onto people who cannot speak for themselves. We must be honest that we cannot truly know, of any particular medieval person, whether they were neurodivergent in the way we mean. The evidence we have from the medieval world, moreover, is far too thin and partial to support any confident claims, for the inner lives and particular minds of medieval people are mostly lost to us, unrecorded and unknowable. We know very little about the inner experience of most medieval people, about how their particular minds worked, about the details that might let us recognize neurodivergence. The records that survive tell us little about such things, and the great majority of medieval people left no record of their inner lives at all. We are working with the faintest of traces, the thinnest of evidence, and it cannot support confident claims about the particular minds of particular people. This thinness of evidence is a real and important limit on what we can say. We must also be careful not to force our modern categories onto a very different world, not to assume that our ways of understanding the mind map neatly onto the medieval world's very different ways of seeing. The medieval world understood minds and behaviors through its own frameworks, its own categories, its own ways of seeing, and these did not correspond to our modern understanding of autism. To read medieval descriptions of unusual people as secret descriptions of autism, to assume that medieval categories were really autism in disguise, is to force our understanding onto a world that saw things quite differently. We must respect the difference of the medieval world's own understanding, and not simply project our own categories back onto it. What then can we honestly say, given all these limits? We can say, with real confidence, that neurodivergent minds have always existed, that autism is part of the natural variation of humankind, and was therefore surely present in the medieval world as in every age. And we can wonder, gently and respectfully, about how such minds might have lived, imagining their possible experiences and places, without ever claiming to know for certain about any particular person. This is honest wondering, humble and careful, that affirms the certain truth of neurodivergence's ancient presence, while respecting the real limits of what we can know about particular lives. It is enough, this honest wondering, to give dignity and recognition to the neurodivergent minds of the past, without pretending to a false certainty. Let that honest humility settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the long human thread of difference that connects all the ages. Having acknowledged the limits of what we can know, we may return now to the one thing we can affirm with real confidence and real warmth, that neurodivergent minds have always been part of humanity, that there runs through all the ages a long and unbroken thread of human difference, connecting the differently wired minds of every age into one great human story. This is the affirming heart of our wonder, and it is worth dwelling on gently. Let us reflect on the long human thread of difference. Neurodivergent minds are part of the natural variation of humankind, and this means that they have been present in every age and every place, an unbroken presence stretching back through all of human history to the very beginning. There has never been a time without neurodivergent people, never an age without minds that worked in the ways we now recognize as autistic, for such minds are woven into the very fabric of humanity, part of what we are as a species. From the earliest human communities through every age and era down to our own day, the differently wired mind has been present, contributing its gifts, living its particular way of being, part of the human family in every generation. This is a long and unbroken thread indeed, stretching across all of human time. This long thread connects us, across the centuries, to the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world and of every age, binding all the differently wired minds of history into one great human story. The autistic person of today is connected, through this long thread, to the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world, of the ancient world, of every age of humankind, all part of the same enduring human variation, the same ancient way of being. There is a real kinship here, a connection across the centuries between the neurodivergent minds of every age, all sharing in the same fundamental way of being, all part of the same long human thread. The autistic person today is not alone and not new, but part of an ancient and enduring human lineage, connected to countless others across all of time. There is deep comfort and dignity in this long belonging, in the knowledge that neurodivergent minds have always been part of humanity, never alone, never new, never a strange modern aberration, but part of an ancient and honourable human thread. For anyone who is neurodivergent today, there is real comfort in this ancient belonging, in knowing that one's way of being is old and enduring, shared with countless others across all the ages, woven into humanity from the very beginning. This is not a lonely or a novel way of being, but an ancient and shared one, part of the deep and enduring variety of humankind, and there is real dignity and comfort in that long belonging. The neurodivergent mind has always had its place in the human family, and always will, and this long thread of difference is, in truth, a precious part of the human story. For the variety of human minds, including the neurodivergent, has always been a source of richness and strength, contributing gifts and perspectives that the human family needs. The differently wired minds of every age have brought their particular gifts. Their deep focus and their love of pattern, their honesty and their attention to detail, their different ways of seeing, enriching the human world with their particular contributions. The long thread of neurodivergence is not merely a thread of difference, but a thread of gift and contribution, a precious part of the human story that has enriched every age. And we may celebrate this long thread, this ancient and enduring presence of the differently wired mind, as one of the beautiful and valuable things about humanity. It is worth pausing to feel the full warmth of this, for it is more than an abstract idea. It means that no autistic person has ever been the first of their kind, alone and unprecedented. Every one of them has been part of a vast and ancient company stretching back beyond memory. It means that the child who lines up their treasures just so, the craftsman lost happily in their work, the person who cannot bear the crowded room but comes alive in the quiet, are all continuing something as old as humanity itself, something that has been present in every village and every century since the beginning. There is a deep belonging in that, a sense of being woven into the oldest fabric of the human story, rather than standing outside it. Whatever name a given age has used, or failed to use, the thing itself has always been there, carried forward from one generation to the next, an unbroken inheritance of human variety. And to know oneself part of that long inheritance is, I think, a genuinely comforting thing. Let that long human thread settle gently in the dark. We turn now to what the past might teach us about all of this. As our gentle wandering draws toward its close, we may pause to ask what all of this might teach us, what gentle lessons we might carry away from our wander through the medieval world and its differently wired minds. For there are, I think, Some real and valuable things to be learned from this wandering. Lessons worth holding on to. Let us reflect gently on what the past can teach us. The first lesson, and the deepest, is simply that neurodivergent minds have always been part of humanity, that autism is not new or strange or a modern aberration, but an ancient and enduring part of the human family. This is a truth worth holding on to, for it grounds our understanding of autism in the deep history of humankind, revealing it as a natural and enduring variation rather than a novel affliction. To know that neurodivergent people have always existed, in every age, is to understand autism more truly, and to hold it with more warmth, recognizing it as part of the deep and enduring variety of humanity. This is perhaps the most valuable lesson of our wandering, this grounding of autism in the long human story. A second lesson is that different ages have accommodated difference in different ways, some better and some worse, and that we might learn from the ways the medieval world, for all its limitations, sometimes made room for the differently wired mind. We have seen that the medieval world, though it lacked our understanding, sometimes offered real places to neurodivergent minds, honoured roles like the solitary hermit, or valued callings like the focused craftsman that suited their particular ways of being. We might learn from this that accommodating difference is not only a matter of understanding, but also of making places, of offering roles and niches where different minds can find their home and contribute their gifts. This is a lesson worth carrying, this recognition of the value of making places for difference. A third lesson is the importance of understanding itself, of the difference it makes to recognize and accept the differently wired mind rather than to misjudge it, a lesson taught by the difficulties that medieval misunderstanding could bring. We have seen that a world without understanding could misjudge and mistreat the neurodivergent mind, bringing real hardship to those who were simply different, and this reminds us of the genuine value of the understanding we now have. To understand autism, to recognize and accept the neurodivergent mind, is a real good, sparing people the hardship of being misjudged and allowing them to be valued for who they are. This lesson, the value of understanding, is one of the most important we can carry from our wandering. And a fourth lesson, gentler and warmer, is simply to appreciate the gifts of the differently wired mind, the deep focus and love of pattern, the honesty and attention to detail, the different ways of seeing that such minds bring, which have enriched every age including our own. We have seen that the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world might have contributed real gifts, fine crafts and deep knowledge and careful work, and this reminds us to value the gifts that such minds bring today. To appreciate the gifts of the differently wired mind, to recognize its real contributions, is to understand more truly the value of human variety and the richness that different minds bring to the human world. These are the gentle lessons of our wandering, worth holding warmly as we near its close. Let those gentle lessons settle in the dark. We turn now to the comfort of being understood in our own time. Having wandered through a world that had no understanding of autism, we may turn now, with real warmth and gratitude, to our own time and to the genuine comfort of the understanding we have come to have. For if the medieval world's lack of understanding could bring difficulty, then our own growing understanding is a real and precious thing, worth appreciating with gratitude. Let us reflect gently on the comfort of being understood today. We live in a time when autism is understood as never before, recognized and named and increasingly accepted, so that neurodivergent people today can know themselves and be known in a way that was simply impossible in the medieval world. Where the neurodivergent people of the past lived unnamed and unrecognized, without any framework to understand themselves or to be understood by others, neurodivergent people today can have a name for their way of being, an understanding of themselves, a recognition and acceptance that the past could not offer. This is a genuine advance, a real gift of our own age, that autism can be recognized and understood, that neurodivergent people can know themselves and find others who share their way of being. The comfort of being understood is a real and precious thing. This understanding brings real benefits, real help and support and acceptance that can make a genuine difference to neurodivergent lives, easing difficulties and allowing gifts to flourish. With understanding comes the possibility of support, of accommodation, of acceptance, of help with what is difficult, and encouragement of what is strong. Neurodivergent people today can find understanding and support, can have their needs recognized and accommodated, can be valued for their gifts and helped with their challenges in ways that the unrecognized neurodivergent people of the past could not. This practical fruit of understanding, this help and support and acceptance, is a real good, a genuine improvement in the lives of neurodivergent people that our growing understanding has made possible. Perhaps most precious of all is the acceptance that understanding can bring, the recognition of the neurodivergent mind as a valid and valued way of being, rather than a strangeness to be corrected. As understanding grows, so too can acceptance, the recognition that autism is a natural and valid variation, that the neurodivergent mind is not wrong or broken but simply different, and worthy of acceptance and respect. This growing acceptance, this recognition of the neurodivergent mind's dignity and worth, is perhaps the most precious fruit of our understanding, offering neurodivergent people the acceptance and respect that every person deserves. The comfort of being accepted for who one is, of being valued rather than corrected, is a deep and genuine good. We should not pretend, of course, that understanding and acceptance are yet complete, for there is still far to go, still much misunderstanding to overcome, still much room for acceptance to grow. But we may take real comfort in how far understanding has come, in the genuine progress that has been made, in the recognition and acceptance that neurodivergent people can find today in a way the past could not offer. And we may commit ourselves to carrying this progress further, to deepening our understanding and widening our acceptance, so that neurodivergent people may be ever more fully recognized, valued, and embraced. There is real hope in this, real comfort in how far we have come, and real promise in how far we may yet go. Let that comfort of understanding settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the differently wired minds themselves, at the heart of all we have wondered. As we near the end of our gentle wander, let us turn from the callings and characteristics we have explored to the differently wired minds themselves, the real neurodivergent people of the medieval world, as human as ourselves, who lived out their lives in that distant age. For behind all our wondering were real people, and it is in remembering them as people that we find the deepest meaning in our journey. Let us turn gently to the minds behind it all. Think of the real neurodivergent people of the medieval world, living their particular ways of being, with their particular gifts and challenges, their particular joys and difficulties, as real and as human as any neurodivergent person today. These were real people, with inner lives and particular minds, with things they loved and things they found hard, with their own experiences of the world and their own ways of being in it. Behind the characteristics we have wondered about, the deep focus and the love of pattern, the sensory intensity and the honest tongue, were real people who lived these ways of being, real neurodivergent minds experiencing the medieval world in their own particular ways. They were as real and as human as ourselves, these differently wired minds of the past. Think of what they might have felt and experienced, the joys of their deep interests and the comforts of their routines, the difficulties of an uncomprehending world, and the pleasures of their particular gifts. The neurodivergent people of the medieval world knew, we may imagine, the deep joy of an absorbing interest, the comfort of a reassuring routine, the pleasure of work that suited their minds, alongside the difficulties that an uncomprehending world could bring. Their inner lives held both joy and difficulty, both the pleasures of their particular gifts and the challenges of their particular differences, as neurodivergent lives do today. To remember them as real people is to remember the fullness of their experience, the joys as well as the difficulties, the richness of their particular inner lives. Think of how they found their way, drawn toward the callings that suited them, valued for their gifts, loved by their families, finding their places and their purposes in the medieval world. Many of them, we may hope and reasonably believe, found real places and real belonging, roles that suited their minds and communities that made room for them, the love of families who cherished them, and the value of work that fit their gifts. Their lives were not only difficulty but also achievement and belonging, the finding of a place and a purpose, the contribution of their gifts, the experience of being valued and loved. To remember them as real people is to remember these achievements and belongings, the real places they found in their world. In remembering the differently wired minds of the medieval world in this way, we move beyond the characteristics and the callings to a deeper appreciation of them as real people, as fellow human beings, as neurodivergent minds, much like those among us today. They lived and worked, focused and created, struggled and belonged, experienced joy and difficulty, lived out their particular ways of being in the medieval world. It is right that we remember them so, with warmth and recognition, seeing across the centuries the real neurodivergent people behind all our wondering, our kin in the long human story of neurological difference. Let that human recognition settle gently in the dark. We turn now to the close-knit village world and the place it might have held for those who were different. There is one more feature of the medieval world worth pausing over gently, one that our own world of strangers and crowds has largely lost, and that might have made a real difference to the neurodivergent people of that distant age. The small, close-knit community, the village that knew everyone, where every person had their known place. This is a warm and rather hopeful thing to wonder about. Let us reflect gently on the village that knew everyone. The medieval world was, for most people, a world of small and stable communities, of villages and small towns, where people lived their whole lives among the same faces, where everyone knew everyone else, and had done so from birth. Unlike our own world of strangers and crowds and constant change, the medieval village was a place of deep familiarity, where each person was known to all the others, their character and their ways understood through a lifetime of shared living. This was a world of the known, not the anonymous, a world where each person had their place in a web of familiar relationships that stretched back through the years. The village knew its own, deeply and thoroughly, in a way our own world of strangers rarely does. In such a world, we might gently wonder, the person who was different might have had a more settled and accepted place than in a world of strangers, their differences known and understood and accommodated through long familiarity. Where a stranger's differences might provoke suspicion or misunderstanding, the known village members' differences were simply part of who they were, understood and accepted through a lifetime of familiarity, woven into their known place in the community. The different person in the medieval village was not an alarming stranger but a known neighbour, their ways familiar, their place established, their differences accommodated through the deep knowledge that a small community has of its own. This familiarity might have offered a real acceptance, a settled place for the different person within the known web of the community. The small community might also have found a role and a use for the different person, a way of fitting them into the life of the village that suited their particular gifts and accommodated their particular needs. In a world where everyone was known and everyone had their place, the different person too might have had their known role, valued for what they could do, accommodated in what they found hard, woven into the life of the community in a way that fit them. The village that knew everyone might have known too how to make room for its different members, how to value their gifts and accommodate their needs, how to give them a settled place in the shared life. This finding of a known place, this accommodation through familiarity, might have served the neurodivergent person well. Of course, small communities can also be hard on those who differ, and we should not imagine the medieval village as a place of perfect acceptance, for familiarity can breed unkindness as well as acceptance, and the different person might sometimes have faced the sharper side of village life. But we may reasonably believe that many neurodivergent people found, in the deep familiarity of their communities, a real acceptance and a settled place, known and accommodated through a lifetime of shared living. And this reminds us, gently, of something our own world of strangers has lost: the deep familiarity of the small community that knew its own and made room for them, and that might have offered the different person a real belonging. Let that close-knit familiarity settle gently in the dark. We turn now to our final gentle thought, the thread that connects them to us across the centuries. As our long and gentle wander through the differently wired minds of the medieval world draws toward its close, let us hold one final warm thought, a thought that reaches across all the centuries between those distant minds and our own, and finds, in the end, a deep and human connection. For the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world are connected to us, across all the years, by the long and unbroken thread of human difference that runs through all the ages. Let us reflect gently on that thread across the centuries. We are connected to the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world by the deep continuity of human neurology, by the simple fact that the same variety of minds that exists today existed then, that autism is a constant of human nature stretching across all the ages. The neurodivergent person of today shares, with the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world, the same fundamental way of being, the same deep human variation, connected across the centuries by the enduring reality of neurological difference. This is a real connection, a genuine kinship, between the differently wired minds of every age, all sharing in the same ancient human variety, all part of the same long story of human neurological difference. Across the centuries, the neurodivergent minds of every age are kin. We are connected to them too, by the shared experiences that neurological difference brings, the deep focus and the love of pattern, the comfort of routine and the intensity of the senses, the particular joys and difficulties that the neurodivergent mind has always known. The autistic person today, in their deep interests and their love of pattern, their need for routine and their sensory intensity, shares something real with the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world, who knew these same experiences in their own time. These shared experiences connect the neurodivergent minds of every age, binding them across the centuries in a common way of being, a shared experience of the world that reaches across all the years. In these shared experiences, the neurodivergent minds of the past are our kin. There is something steadying and warm in this thought, this sense of connection across the centuries to the differently wired minds who lived so long ago. They are gone now, every one of them, the neurodivergent people of the medieval world, their particular lives long ended, their particular minds long at rest across the great gulf of the centuries. But they were here, they lived, they focused deeply and loved their patterns and sought their quiet and found their places. They were part of the long human story of neurological difference that continues in us, and we are connected to them by that unbroken thread, the long and ancient presence of the differently wired mind across all the ages of humankind, a thread that runs from the deep past through the medieval world to our own day and onward. And so we can let them rest now, the neurodivergent minds of the medieval world, with warmth and recognition, and a sense of our connection to them across the centuries. Their world had no understanding of them, and their lives held difficulty as well as gift, but they belonged, as fully as anyone, to the human family of their time, and they are part of the long and honourable thread of human difference that continues in us. Let that warm sense of connection settle over you now, soft and gentle in the dark, as we prepare at last to let the whole gentle wandering go and drift away into sleep. Let it carry you gently toward rest, this thought of the long thread of difference, of which we are all a part, stretching back across the centuries to the differently wired minds of the medieval world, and far, far beyond. We turn now, at last, towards sleep. So let it all go now, gently, the whole long wandering we have wandered through tonight, the entire gentle imagining of the differently wired minds of the medieval world. Let it fade, the way the past fades, the way the centuries dissolve into a soft and shapeless distance, the focused craftsmen and the patient scribes, the quiet hermits and the keepers of deep knowledge, all the differently wired minds of that distant age, growing dim and quiet and far away, until there is only the soft dark and your own slow breathing and the gathering tide of sleep. Let the medieval world grow quiet and distant now. Let the workshops fall still, the cloisters empty, the villages settle into the deep stillness of the vanished past. Let the whole gentle wandering, all the minds we have imagined and all the lives we have wandered about, drift softly away into the depths of time, all those differently wired minds long at rest now, many centuries into the silence of the past. They are gone now, every one of them, the neurodivergent people of that distant age, their particular lives long ended, their particular minds long at peace, generation upon generation at rest in the deep past, and there is a great soft quiet where all their focus and pattern and quiet once was. Let them rest, gently, in the peace of the long vanished centuries, and now, at last, so may you. Feel the warmth and comfort of your bed, soft and safe around you. Feel how far you are from all that distant wandering, how safe, how comfortable, how gently held by the quiet of your own night. There is nothing you need to carry from all we have explored, nothing to trouble you, no difficulty to disturb the calm of your rest, only the soft dark and the deep quiet, and the simple comfort of your own warm bed, many centuries away from all that we have touched upon tonight. Feel your breathing slow, and your body soften, and the small cares of the day loosen their grip, one by one, and drift away into the warm dark, until there is only you, and the quiet, and the deepening peace. And feel, perhaps, a quiet warmth as you lie there, safe and comfortable, a gentle sense of connection to all the differently wired minds who have been part of humanity across all the ages, and a quiet gratitude for the understanding and acceptance that our own time has come to offer. Whatever way your own mind is made, you belong, as every mind belongs, to the long and varied and beautiful family of humankind, connected across the centuries to all the many minds that have been. There is nothing to fear and nothing to trouble you, only the soft surrender to sleep, the gentle sinking down into the warm and shapeless dark, where all is quiet and peaceful and well. The whole long wandering we have travelled, the whole gentle imagining of the medieval world and its many minds, can simply be set down now and released, dissolving into the soft dark, leaving you weightless and at peace, drifting gently down into sleep. And if any last image still lingers at the edge of your thoughts, some quiet craftsman absorbed in his work, some patient scribe bent over his letters, some solitary soul finding peace in the stillness, let it grow soft now, and slow, and distant, the way a dream dissolves as you slip past its edge into sleep, the images dimming, the world fading, the whole medieval world dissolving quietly into the warm and shapeless dark. You can simply let it drift away, like the day itself, like the centuries themselves, out into the quiet and gone. Good night, traveller. The differently wired minds of the medieval world are long at rest now, all their focus and their patience and their quiet, long since passed into the silence of the deep past, across the great gulf of the centuries, and you are safe and warm and well, here in the gentle quiet of your own night, part of the long and beautiful family of human minds. Rest easy, sleep deep. I'll be here, somewhere in the quiet, when you wake.